Hello and welcome to Video Notes 2. So what we are doing here is we are still in the world of factoring, but this time we're going to factor with a number in front of x squared. So this is how you factored when we factored in school. It's not too difficult. So we're going to start off exactly the same way as how we factored in Video Notes 1. Again, we have a trinomial, so every time we have a trinomial, we draw an x. I take my a number times my c number. So in this one, a is 2. And c is 2. 2 times 2 is the number 4. And then I take my b number and put that on the bottom. The b of this equation is a 5. So in this expression, b is 5. So again, same rules apply. What multiplies to make 4, but adds to make 5? So 1 times 4 multiplies to make 4, where 1 plus 4 adds to make the number 5. So in this case, I cannot just go straight to parentheses with x's in front because I don't have just x squared in front. I have a number in the front. So every time there is a number in front of x squared, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, if there's a number there, we have to do something called factor by grouping. So what factor by grouping means is we start with the first term, 2x squared. Instead of this middle term, it's called splitting the middle. So instead of that middle term, I'm going to write the two numbers from my x puzzle. So 1x plus 4x is 5x. So we split the middle. So instead of writing the middle, we wrote down those two terms. And then the back number stays the back number. So the a is here, the c is here, but we use the x puzzle to get those middle terms. So now what we do is we split the middle. So we draw a line down the middle. So I look at these and I ask myself, what can I take out? What can I remove from both of these terms here? So they both have an x in common, so I can take out an x. When I take out an x, that leaves me with, it's really like a 1x. 2 divided by 1 is 2. When exponents are stacked, you subtract. So 2 minus 1 is 1x plus 1 divided by 1 is 1. X to the 1 over x to the 1. 1 minus 1 is 0, so those x's cancel. Okay, so I took out the greatest common factor. So I'm going to do the same thing here. What is the greatest common factor between a 4x and a 2? Well, I can divide them both by 2, so I'm going to take a 2 out. 4 divided by 2 is 2 with an x. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I know that we did this correctly because the numbers inside the parentheses are the same. So my final step is you take what that was. It was 2x plus 1, and I take that out. And then I write the leftovers. What's left over in this equation is an x and a positive 2. So that is how we factor when there's a number in front. So try the same thing with number 2. We start by doing the x puzzle. Start with the x puzzle and then split the middle. So change that middle into those two factors from your puzzle and then factor by grouping. So go ahead and try number 2. So this worksheet is much shorter than the last one because factor by grouping takes a lot more time than it did when it was just an x squared in the front. So this one here is not that bad. There's less questions here, but a little bit more work for each question. So again, I have a trinomial, an a b, and a c. When I have a trinomial, I draw an x. I take my a number times my c number, and that's the number 14. I take the b and I put it in the bottom. So now I have to figure out what multiplies to make 14 but adds to make 15. Well, 1 times 14 is 14. 1 plus 14 is 15. So those are my factors. So if this was just an x squared in the front, then I'd be done. I would put x plus 1 and x plus 14. But because it's not just x squared, it's 7x squared, then I'm not done quite yet. So what we need to do next is called factor by grouping. I take the first term. Instead of the middle term, I rewrite it as the two terms from my x puzzle. And then I write down my last term. So factor by grouping means I'm going to draw a line down the middle. And I'm going to ask myself, what can I take out of a 7 and a 1? Well, I can divide them both by 1, and they both have an x in them. So I'm going to remove a 1x. When I divide by 1x, 7 divided by 1 is 7. x2 over x1 is x, plus 1 divided by 1 is 1. X over x is no more x's. Same thing in this one. What can we divide by? We can divide those both by 2. So I write down a 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7 with an x. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So now I did it correctly because the number in parentheses is the same. So I'm going to write that number first, 7x plus 1. Done. Then my leftovers, there's a 1x and a positive 2. So I have factored this trinomial into their two binomials. If you multiplied these out, you would end up with this original question here. Okay? Try the same thing with number 4. Go ahead and see if you can factor number 4. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing like we did in the last video. On the first page we factored, and on the second page we factored and solved. So same idea. I have a trinomial, so I'm going to start with that trinomial. Like always, I have an A, a B, and a C. So A times C is the number 12, B is the number 8. What makes 12? 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Which of these factors would add to make 8? Here it is, a 2 and a 6. Okay, so what I have here is a 4x squared. Instead of this middle, I'm going to split the middle, and I'm going to write the two numbers for my x puzzle. And then I put the number in the back. So now I factor by grouping. To factor by grouping, I can divide these both by 2. And they both have an x. So that's 2x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. x2 over x1 leaves us with an x. 2 divided by 2 is 1. X over x will cancel. These numbers, I can divide them both by 3. So if I divide 6 divided by 3 is 2 with an x. 3 divided by 3 is the number positive 1. Okay, they match, so we know we did it correctly. So I get 2x plus 1 and 2x plus 3. But the difference between number 5 and what we did earlier is that this has an equal sign. So in the end here, I need to put equals 0. So now I need to solve this. So 2x plus 1 equals 0, and 2x plus 3 equals 0. So now I can solve for x. Subtract 1 from both sides. 2x equals negative 1. To get x by itself, we divide by 2. So one answer is x equals negative 1/2. Same thing for this one here. Subtract 3 to get x by itself. That leaves me with 2x equals negative 3. Get x by itself by dividing. So that's x equals negative 3 over 2. So then the last thing, we factored it. We broke it into its two parentheses. That's what factoring means. We solved it, meaning that we solved for x, and we know what x equals. So the last step is we need to sketch the graph. So just like we did in the last one. So this one here says that it has one x at negative 1/2. Negative 1/2 is right about here. The other x is negative 3/2. Negative 3/2 is the same as negative 1.5 or negative 1.5, so it's about right here. And again, we connect our dots and it makes a U shape. Okay, a lot of work, but there aren't very many of these. So try the same thing with number 6. Step 1, do the x method. ABC, AC over B. Okay, so do the x method in order to split the middle. So rewrite it so we can factor by grouping. And then solve for x by setting them both equal to 0. get x by itself. And then once you get x completely by itself, you can put them on a graph. X is a -1/2, and the other x is -1.5. Okay, try the same thing with number 6. Okay, here's the last one. I'm going to do one, and then you can do one here. So on number 7. So in number 7, I have an A, a B, and a C. So make sure you are writing this down for me, please. So A times C, 7 times 4 is the number 28. B is the number -11. What multiplies to make 28? I'm going to write all of the factors in order, starting at 1. 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7. Which one of those could be manipulated to make an 11? It's right here. 4 plus 7 is 11, which means that -4 plus -7 is a -11. So now if this only had x squared in front, and these are your factors, you put them with x's and you're done. But there's a number in front. So because there's a number in front, we need to factor by grouping. So 7x squared. Instead of the middle term, I'm rewriting that as -4x minus 7x. And then the number from the back is a +4. Okay, so we take the front number and the back number, and instead of the middle term, you split it into the two numbers from your x puzzle. Okay, so factor by grouping. What can I divide these numbers by? I can divide them both by 1, and they both have an x in them. So I'm going to take out that 1x. 7 divided by 1 is 7. x2 over x1 is x. 4 divided by 1 is 4. X over x will cancel. These here, I can divide them both by 1. There isn't a bigger factor I can divide by. But this is very important. If this is a negative that's right next to my line, I'm going to take them out as a -1. In order for them to match, I need to remove the negative. So -7 divided by -1 is +7 with an x. 4 divided by -1 is -4. So now that my parentheses match, I know I did it correctly. So my factors are 7x minus 4 and 1x minus 1. The original question says equals 0. So now I need to solve. Solving means I need to set them equal to 0. To solve for x, we move the constant first. That's the number in the back. The opposite of -4 is +4. And then we divide. Same thing here. Get x by itself. +1 makes that go away. So x equals 1. Last but not least, we're going to sketch these solutions on a graph. X is 1 is right here. 4/7 is a fraction, so it's going to be like right about here-ish. It's not a full 1, 4/7. So you connect your dots. And it makes a parabola that looks like that. Okay? Last but not least, try number 8. Same idea, X method. Get your factors, factor by grouping, solve, and figure out what x equals. Okay? That is it for video notes 2. So you are now done with this week. You have 1 week left, and that is it. So we are almost at the 9th week of online learning. So you have 1 more week, and then we are done with this school year. So you guys go ahead and finish up this work, and then you are done for this week, and we will see you again next week.